word tribal or Adivasi brings to our mind a picture of half-naked men and women with arrows and spears in their hands, feathers in their head, and speaking a language which is alien to us. There are communities in India still living in line with their traditional values, customs, and beliefs, where they could continue to live in peace with nature and unpolluted environment. These communities variously they are called as natives, aboriginals, Adivasis, tribals, indigenous, and sometimes uncontacted people. In India, we mostly refer them as Adivasis or Girijans. The transformation among these tribal societies is very slow. That is why they have been backward and poor in comparison to the other communities. Today, the governments all over the world are paying special attention towards the development of these tribes or aboriginals. Number of inclusive policies and programs are being run by the governments to connect tribals with the mainstream of the world. Now it's important to understand the definition or how do we define the tribes. This term tribes originated around the time of the Greek city-states and the early formation of the Roman Empire. The Latin term tribus has since been transformed to mean a group of persons forming a community or claiming descent from a common ancestor. The Imperial Gazetteer of India 1911 defines a tribe as a collection of families bearing a common name, speaking a common dialect, occupying or professing to occupy a common territory, and is not usually endogamous, though originally it might have been so. Another definition of tribe by D.N. Majumdar in 1961 is that a tribe is a collection of families or a group of families bearing a common name, members of which occupy the same territory, speak the same language, and observe certain taboos regarding marriage, professions, or occupation, and have developed a well assessed system of reciprocity and mutuality of obligations. Tribes in India were considered to be a backward class until 1919. They were termed as depressed class. The Census of India accorded the different nomenclature for tribes. In 1931, the census referred as primitive tribes. In 1941, the census termed as tribes. In 1951, the census as scheduled tribes, and the Constitution of India refers to such communities as scheduled tribes. Article 366(25) defines scheduled tribes as such tribes or tribal communities or parts of or groups within such tribes or tribal communities as are deemed under Article 342 to be scheduled tribes for the purpose of this constitution. The criterion followed for specification of a community as scheduled tribes are indications of primitive traits, distinctive culture, geographical isolation, shyness of contact with the community at large, and backwardness. This criteria is not spelled out in the Constitution but has become well established. If we see the geographical and demographic profile of the tribals in India, census of 2011 states that they constitute around 8.6% of the population of India. Draft Tribal Policy 2006 records 698 scheduled tribes in India. As per the census of India 2011, the number of individual groups notified as scheduled tribe is 705. The five broad regional grouping of the tribes is Himalaya, that is Himalayan region, Northeast Himalayan regions, Central Himalayan regions, Northwestern Himalayan regions, Middle regions, that is Bihar, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, and Chhattisgarh, where more than 55% of the tribal people of India live. Then we have western region, that is Rajasthan, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Dadra and Nagar Haveli. Then southern region we have Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka and Kerala. And island region is Andaman and Nicobar in the Bay of Bengal and Lakshadweep in the Arabian Sea. Northeast is often viewed as a singular and homogeneous entity. The region is highly diverse with over 200 tribes and sub-tribes, each of which have their own language, culture, political structures. Now the language. If we see the language, Indo-European, only a little over 1% of the tribal population speak languages of this family. The Bhil and the Halbi tribes being the two main groups among these Indo-European language. Dravidian family. Languages are spoken by tribes such as the Gond, Khond, Koya, Orang and Toda. The Tibetan Burmese languages are spoken by the tribes of the Himalayas and northeast India. Austroasiatic. This is the family of language which is spoken only by the tribals in the country like the Santhal, Munda and Ho. The scheduled tribe communities live in about 15% of the country area, and over 80% of the scheduled tribes work in the primary sectors against 53% of the general population. The sex ratio amongst the scheduled tribe is 991 families to every 1000 males in rural areas and 980 families to every 1000 males in urban areas, the average being 990. Regarding the distribution of scheduled tribe population by the states, Madhya Pradesh stands first with 14.7%, that is followed by Maharashtra which has 10.1% of the tribal population, Odisha has 9.2, Rajasthan has approximately 8.9, Gujarat coming to very close to it is 8.6, Jharkhand 8.3, Chhattisgarh 7.5, Karnataka 4.1 and Meghalaya 2.5, and the remaining states represent around 11.6 of the total tribal population. Proportion of scheduled tribes in rural areas is 13.11% and in urban areas is 2.8%. Distribution of tribes in India. The scheduled tribes are notified in 31 states and union territories. The total population of the country, as I said earlier, is 10.43 crore, constituting 8.6% of the total population. There are certain characteristics of the tribal population in India. Kinship is an instrument of social bonds. There is a lack of hierarchy among men and other groups. There is absence of strong, complex and formal organizations, and communitarian basis of land holding has a very important role in this tribal population. Signatory character. There is a little value that is attached on surplus accumulation, on the use of capital and on market trading. There is a lack of distinction between form and substance of religion, and there is an absolute distinct psychological bent for enjoying life. Endogamous groups. Tribal population generally do not marry outside their tribes, and marriage between the tribe is highly appreciated and much applauded. But the pressing effects of changes following the force of mobility have also changed the attitude of the tribes, and now inter-tribe marriages are becoming more and more common. Protection awareness. Tribal people always need protection from intrusion and infiltration, and for this a single political authority is established and all the powers are vested in this authority. The safety of the tribals is left to the skill and mental power of the person enjoying political authority. The tribal chief is aided by the tribal community. In the event of contingencies, tribes is divided into number of small groups, and each group is headed by its own leader. The chief of the work or the group accorded to the directives received by him from the tribal chief. Rudimentary type of religion. Tribes believe in certain myths and a rudimentary type of religion. Further, they believe in totems signifying objects having mystic relationship with members of the tribe. They also have egalitarian values. The tribal social organization is based on the egalitarian principles. Thus, there are no institutionalized inequalities like the caste system or the sex-based inequalities. Thus, men and women enjoy a equal status and freedom. However, some degree of social inequality may be found in some cases in the tribal chief or the tribal king who enjoys a high social status, exercises political power and also possesses wealth. Distinct political organizations. Every tribe has its own distinct political organization who looks after the interests of the tribal people. The whole political authority lies in the hands of tribal chief in some tribes, and tribal communities exist to help the tribal chief in discharging his functions in the interest of the tribes. This has been a very brief introduction of the tribes in India, just to give you a very preliminary outline. In details, we will be discussing in subsequent sessions that I will be taking. But one thing is very important, that why do we study tribes? They are the primitive lords, and why is it important to study this 8.6 population of the country? It is important to know about the tribes because tribal people are considered to be the best conservationists, and they have managed their cultivable land for many generations. They help us in protection of the environment, fight against climate change, and build resilience to natural disasters. All these aspects we will be taking in details in other sessions. Tribes are among the most deprived and oppressed section of India. Half of the Adivasi people do not have land. Poverty, deprivation, and poor health among Adivasi women and children are the common phenomenon. We have several laws and constitutional provisions such as the 5th schedule and the 6th schedules for certain areas of the Northeast India which recognize indigenous people rights to land and self-governance. The laws aimed at protecting the indigenous people have, however, numerous shortcomings, and the implementation so far has not been very satisfactory. So these are some of the basic things which I have spoken about the tribes, and we will be taking the detailed in depth in other sessions.